All right. Back for another episode of Bad Ideas podcast. This one indirectly sponsored by T-Mobile because it's recorded over broadband. I'm here with Matt Wollersheim. Did I pronounce it right?
You did, Nick.
All right. We just went through a training session. I messed it up like 800 times, but we got it right when it's on record, so it doesn't count. Matt's an entrepreneur, heads up partnerships for Straight North. Been awesome to get to know him over the last couple months. Worked on a couple projects together. But he's an entrepreneur first, I think partnership manager second. So he's got a lot of good ideas. He's run businesses himself. So we've got a fun, really awful idea to look at together and kind of see what ideas come to fruition. But Matt, before we do that, you mind kind of running us through your background? You said your first company started when you were like 9?
Yeah. It was actually, it's called a Badge-O Mint. It was a custom button making thing. And I used to go through the classifieds and find all the garage sales and then call them and show up with a card table and the whole button making thing. And this is like the late 80s. So it was a little bit of a different vibe. You could just, people didn't care about this weird connection. And then, they flip through a thing and then pick one they wanted. Then you cut it out and make a button. And I did that for several years.
That's awesome. Is it like you found distribution by finding like garage sales and then you just show up where shoppers were? That's awesome.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I did like a farmer's market once or twice, but mainly it was just garage sales.
That's amazing. And then you, what was next? Was that the first of two or what else did you do?
First of several, in college, I had a couple little things before, like eBay selling and stuff like that. But when I was in college, late 90s, I started a online security product company. So I had a bunch of my friends got their apartments broken into. I had a couple girl friends that got, kind of in situations in campus that were sketchy. So I started a little company that sold inexpensive home security that you could like add to an apartment that wouldn't ruin the infrastructure. And then also like pepper spray and stuff like that for campus security and whatnot. So I ran it for several years. It was a decent little business until Amazon was created and stopped selling just books. You know what I mean? So it kind of took the market share and drove me out. But it was really fun. Paid the bills for several years.
That's super awesome. And then your last company you sold, right?
Well, it's actually kind of on the shelf. We started a payment processing brokerage in 2005. And kind of ran that for about 16 years until COVID really just put us in the ground. We were starting to kind of get hit by Stripe and Square and Venmo and all these other, medium to high risk processors. And they really just made things a lot easier for people. And they're great companies for some reasons. And so it was tough. It was tough to say goodbye to a baby that was a really kind of a fun ride.
Yeah.
But so it's actually still a website, Performance Card Service. You can check it out. But
there you go. Maybe someday.
You never know.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot about the crypto space, and it's the stack doesn't work the same way as the acquirer stack in a card, but I feel like there will be a need for the same thing when that goes mainstream. Making similar.
Yeah, we were early adopters
in different networks. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I bought my first Bitcoin at like $300, I was trying to buy my first Bitcoin at like 8 cents, but it was like impossible to actually go through this whole rigmarole with like Mt. Gox and some of the first, which I'm glad I didn't because they went under obviously. But we were trying to integrate this into websites. Like we were one of the first people to work with processors who were integrating crypto platforms into websites and allowing people to pay just normal vanilla websites, not even high risk. And we just never really got there. It never was profitable to sell. It was the pricing was too low. It just wasn't good for our business model. But I was in the ICO for Ethereum. It was fun to be.
It's like the button business I was going to say, except there's no garage sale, right? Like you have the product, but there's no garage sales to go to because there's no buyers.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll get there. I have a feeling near term we'll get there. All right, so let's look at this bad idea. I'll flip it out.
Sure.
So we've got an online marketplace for bad ideas. is the business. And that's the
Bring it
entirety
on.
of the bad idea. There's no like background info on this, but my interpretation is it's literally a marketplace where you sign up and you like buy other people's business ideas. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, it kind of seems like a little bit like I've seen this company buy biz sell and
Yeah.
.com, and you're actually buying actual businesses. It's a marketplace for purchasing businesses, whether they're small or large or whatever. But this is just buying ideas. Is that
That
right?
that's what I assume, right? It says
Yeah.
specifically ideas. So yeah, like no track record, no asset value, no cash flow, no contracts. Like you're literally just buying something that somebody came up with.
So is it a full business plan? I mean, are we getting everything, or is it just, hey, I have an idea. Trust me
Well,
because of my great profile and reputation.
I think that would make more value. And we were talking before the podcast about Shark Tank, and I feel like a lot of folks look at the VC space, they look at Shark Tank, and they think that people are selling ideas. But I don't know. Did you guys ever raise money for any of your companies?
We haven't had to. Yeah, no.
That's because you're
We had a couple
fresh
investors,
off the
but
shoulder.
they didn't put anything in. I mean, maybe a few grand, but and
Yeah.
then they, had 10%. But yeah,
Yeah. So real bootstrapping. I think people believe that like VCs are approached by folks with ideas, but there's like a lot of legwork and entity structuring, and generally you need some kind of demonstration of traction. Like I can sell this thing, or there's a market that will buy this thing if you invest in it before
right.
anyone gives it a shot. And you see some of that on Shark Tank, but I think there's this general perception that if you come up with an awesome business idea, it's worth something before you even like pitched it to a customer or showed it to the market. Uh, so my guess is whoever came up with this bad idea thought that there's people like out there that want to start a business but don't know what they want to do, so they would come here and pay for someone else's bad ideas. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's kind of nuts because starting and running a business takes a creative head, right? I mean, so if you're right off the gate, you're purchasing the idea. Like, how are you going to really build this out? I don't know. Seems like you're
Well,
cheating a
also, like,
little, and then
how
setting
do you
yourself
even
up for failure.
transact? Like, how do
Right,
you transact? It's a marketplace. What you look for certain categorical ideas, so you need to know what you want, but they can't give you the idea before you pay for it. So, like, at some
right.
point, it's a slot machine, right?
Agreed. And like on Shark Tank, the first question they ask usually is how many sales have you had? What was last year? What was last quarter? They want to know. So if this is just purchasing a business idea, there's no sales yet. And how do you quantify a good idea next to, you could say, hey, I've got an idea, put CBD on a website and sell it. Like, okay,
Yeah.
that's been done. I don't know, you know?
Yeah. So good point. They're not guaranteed unique ideas. So maybe that's a wrinkle to make it a good idea. If there was some sort of certification you get with your business idea that like no one else has ever thought of this, and there's no operating business that does this today. Uh, but then at least you're selling like due diligence. You're not just selling the idea,
Yes.
like you're selling the
Yep.
research, which has value. Uh,
True. True.
yeah. So I think our theme is that ideas are useless, right? Like ideas have no value on their own.
If I could have made money on ideas alone, I'd be a millionaire. I have like an idea every month that I pitch to my wife, and she's like, maybe this one needs to be fleshed out a little more. And then I get there to a certain stage, she's like, no, this is not going to. So
Well, how do you, I mean,
yeah,
you've started a bunch of companies. How do you decide what the good ones are? Because you have the ideas yourself. So you kind of have this marketplace in your head already. Like, how do you decide I'm going to go after this one? Like this one we're going to make real.
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's the obvious things, is there a market for it? Is there a gap? People need the service for some reason. Do you see profitability? Do you have enough startup cash to make sure you can get there? Right. And then are you interested in it? I think that's the huge one that people overlook. They're like, oh, I'll just buy this business idea, or I'll buy this business that's half built. And then they don't like it. They're like, I'll see, Pepperidge Farm bread route. You can purchase the bread route. You put 30 grand down and then you own the bread route and the exclusivity in this area. And then you can and run it for a few months and then hire someone and they run it and you can purchase another bread route. And it's like, yeah, but if you hate bread route, if you don't like, if you're not into bread, if you're not into like, what's the new product? I'm excited to see what Schneider's new pretzel is releasing, or, it just seems like you're just going to get bored, right? You got to be passionate is what I'm getting at long-windedly.
Yeah. Well, cause I think the second you bump into a roadblock or a challenge, like you need that passion to carry you through. And if you hate what you're doing, like it's easier to unplug than to try to get through it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason that like I'm excited about this podcast, particularly talking to entrepreneurs. That's my favorite part. But like this is the part of business that I like the best, like talking about something and trying to bang on it until we turn it into something else. That you never like really see out there, but there's so much iteration that goes into every business before it actually works. And people only see the end, output. Here's what you actually have. Here's what you're selling. Here's what it does. And it all seems logical at that point because it has to be logical to succeed. But like, unless you had the foresight to bring a pin making company to a garage sale, it's kind of hard to have a hit on the first take, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's weird. Like going back to my last company, we saw in the industry with the rise of e-commerce and bank. My partner ran a domestic low risk vanilla, POS system payment processor. And he saw the need. He said, look, banks are no longer taking, certain types of e-commerce products for almost no reason. They were deemed high risk because they have a chargeback risk, or they're in a weird jurisdiction, or they have reoccurring billing, or the product type or sales type, maybe, is high risk for them. So we saw the need, and then that's when we created this thing. So I think that is a huge part that people also overlook, right? I mean, I think they just put the fifth car wash on my street on the island I live on. We don't need another one, and like, they're like, we're like, we love the idea. You can make so much money in car washes. Yeah. Not when there's already 4 in an island of 10,000 people. That just doesn't make sense. Right. So the passion, the need, huge.
The context too, like understanding the market, identifying the gap. If we pivot to making this bad idea a good idea, if we keep talking about the research, like understanding if there's a space for this to work, that would be an even more valuable marketplace, like a marketplace of market gaps instead of a marketplace of business ideas. So
I like that.
This is inefficient. Here's the opportunity. Here's the size. Here's where it's most prevalent, that sort of thing. I also realized too that we're both payments nerds. So we dived into your business without explaining what it is. But for folks who don't understand what a payment processor is, or like an acquirer business does, mind kind of running through that real quick?
Yeah. So, what we always just like to say is we were taking the guesswork out of choosing a processor. And in kind of the medium to high risk space, there's a lot of, shady characters and, processors that have a poor reputation for communication and on-time payouts and approval, percentage and stuff like that. So we would vet these on our own, test these, with merchants who are willing, and then bring them to market. So someone would come to us and say, hi, I live in, this state. I sell this product. This is the method of sales. This is my credit. And we'd say, okay, you're perfect for this processor. And we would place them with that processor. And then being the middleman, we would, mark up the rates and fees and earn a little tiny percentage on every transaction. So it was a great, reoccurring situation. And then you stay on it like a secondary arm of support, because a lot of times these people would then have issues with the processor, but we'd always be there saying, hey, we've got a portfolio with them. So they're going to allow us to escalate any issue and actually get back to us in a timely manner, instead of the merchant. That'd be like just another number for them. So it was an interesting business model that worked well for, a decade. And then it just kind of slowly started to fizzle out. So I'm stoked to be doing what I am now, side note. Because payments was burning me out. I won't lie.
Well, it's a crowded space. So taking that up like 20 or 30,000 feet, the way I understand it, and this is 12 years removed from me working in payments, but like there's you actually putting your card into a website or a POS system in person. And then there's like bank one, bank two, like processor that gets your info, then like a bank that validates your info, then a bank that takes the money from one to the other. And then there's the merchant that receives it on the other end. So there's this whole like routing pipeline.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of different, Stripe you brought up in the beginning, companies that kind of umbrella all of that for you.
Yep.
There are a lot with much less elegant solutions that exist kind of behind the scenes, but they tie into your QuickBooks or your POS and actually make it happen. And as I understand it, what you guys were doing was like constantly evaluating all of these different combinations. So it wasn't just a pricing decision. It was like, are these guys good to work with? Do they pay you on time? Is there variability? So you kind of remove the guesswork, but also give all this value-added service in exchange for buying through you, right?
You nailed it. And, I'd say like vanilla, POS system companies like, a nail salon or a restaurant. It started to be a fight to zero. Merchant account providers were like, okay, cool. Everyone's going to just keep fighting to 0% rate or very, very, very low, where they're making almost no money. And then you go, okay, how do we make money? And you realize the only way to make money is sell new tech, sell new services like chargeback mitigation or, rapid, dispute resolution or new equipment if it's a point of sale brick and mortar situation. So, I realized right off that I did not want to do that. I don't want to work with, I don't want that to be what we're doing. So with high risk, there's a lot higher margins, and that's really why it became and remained exciting,
Yeah. Interesting. We on this same vein, we're also talking about business ideas. We're talking about identifying market gaps. There's a company called Kick Fees out there. Have you heard of them?
The name is familiar. What do they do? Is it like a Kickstarter?
No, it's a processor. And I think they're a broker too, but it's gotten so low, like they're taking zero on the actual transaction, that what they do is they come in and they guarantee you won't pay any card fees as the merchant.
Okay.
But they pass all of those fees on to the payer on the end. So because it's zero and they're getting nothing on the transaction, they put their own convenience fee on the front end if they can be in front of you and your customers. So kind of like an example of the market efficiencying itself out of existence. So people have to like invent new workflows to introduce friction.
That's exactly right.
To allow themselves to charge.
A lot of them call that cash discount. At a restaurant, it's like, 3.25% if you pay with a credit card, but we'll call it cash discount. We'll give you a discount if you pay with cash, but that's just a genius way of making it, passing along the fees to the customer. I love that name, but e-commerce stuff, you never really have to deal with that unless a company like this comes along and is able to, add that to the API and charge you.
Interesting space. All right. Nerdiness aside, back to our timeline marketplace for business ideas. I think like what we've been kind of chipping at is the idea is not nearly as valuable as the problem set it's trying to solve. Would you agree that that's because the idea changes because it has to change to solve the problem many times?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was kind of thinking of something as we were talking and touched on Shark Tank again. Maybe you could sell the business idea of failed Shark Tank pitches, like not exactly Shark Tank, but where like they put together a lot and maybe they didn't even go live yet, but the sharks are like, no, we don't want that. Like I saw a guy who was selling a club, like a wood that you could pee in, super gross and weird, put on the golf course. Sometimes you need to pee. And it was like a hollowed out one, and there's like a little towel, and they did not buy this. The sharks were like, no way I'm peeing in the open on a golf course. And I was like, all right, cool. But maybe someone else would say, hey, I don't know. I work at a golf course that people would love that. And so maybe these business ideas are a little bit more developed, but I guess how do you sell them without someone being like, I'm just going to steal that?
Yeah, right. You have to give the idea up front. I think that's why when you're talking about the research and the context, it's so much more valuable because then the idea is like a listing. Like you give the idea away for free, it's worthless anyway. We kind of agree that, but it's like, if you're talking about your payments business, the idea is a value add driven payments brokerage. that helps people in high risk situations find the best solution. And if you pay, you get all the research that validates that the market exists and like where you need to sell it, the types of merchants you go after, and so on. And something like that, like it doesn't have to be exclusive. So you could sell the
Yeah,
same research like a million times and make money on scale.
that's true.
So
Yeah.
the business ideas are free. Everyone can read them, but they can pay you some kind of nominal fee to get access to the validation behind it. I don't know.
Yeah. And maybe even like, a consulting piece after the fact. We'll stay on and answer questions for 3 months while you grow this idea that we're, experts on because we did the DD early on or
That
stuff.
we're selling to you. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Service, you get much higher fees.
Right.
That's really interesting. I think this is really hammering in that whole theme that like the research and the information that goes into the business idea and helps you build the business is worth so much more than the idea on its own. So it's that pairing again. You have an idea that it's coupled with information that allows it to exist. That sets you up to actually produce something pretty incredible. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. I know. I agree. Yeah. It really is.
They have all
it's,
these.
it's the data.
Go for it.
It's the data, right? At the end of the day, I mean, it really is.
This is validated too by like the micro acquirers and Flippa. You ever been on Flippa.com? It's like a website brokerage online. There's a ton of them, but you go there and even those sites that have businesses with financials, like most of the information there is on the market and the trajectory of the company, the industry they're in. So even when they're selling business, they still don't really focus on the core thing the business does. They talk about the context around the business. So I think we've settled on the fact that this bad idea is bad because the ideas on their own don't have any intrinsic value, but the research and information behind them could be potentially worth a lot, right?
I agree. And you could back it up with all kinds of different ways, right? You could back it up with actual businesses even. Because at the end of the day, there really isn't many new, I don't want to say that, but there's so many businesses that people would run and could actually pick up and run with and be successful in their town or in their region or even online if they're doing maybe something a little different or better. But yeah, I don't know, setting up the whole infrastructure and even like how-tos, right? Besides financials and all that, the whole manual. And so the business idea could be everything and they just need a step by step, right?
Yeah. A business idea and blueprint.
Yeah, there you go.
That's really big value.
Right?
Super big value.
And then show
you see
case studies.
Yeah. Of businesses that actually work this way.
Yeah. Like, this one worked in Dallas. Check it out. We checked everything out. Yeah.
Here's an example of it being successful. Did you find, speaking of blueprint, that having gone through a couple different businesses yourself, when you got to your last one, were there like patterns you were following from the previous businesses? Like, was there almost kind of like a loose playbook that you had in getting it up and running?
A little bit. I think the biggest thing that we learned was if you stay in front of competition early, you'll be better off later. And it seems so obvious, but I think a lot of people they get tied up in, today, the business now, and they don't really, maybe once things are successful or at least, moving forward the way you want, you kind of stop looking at the competition. But in the beginning, I feel like you're looking at the competition like crazy. I mean, you're going to start a restaurant, you're going to sit in every restaurant in the area's parking lot and like mark down how many people are going in, like organic results. So I feel like you do that in the beginning and the first year or two, but then you might get sidetracked and you're not looking. So I feel like that is a big part of, seeing what everyone's doing early and changing as you go. People get stuck in their ways, right?
So keeping your head up, watching the market. So when there's a big shift, you're in front of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage. This is awesome. It's you're the only multi-entrepreneur we've had on so far. So like that experience is cool to draw on, and certainly
and yourself
start a business at 9.
Yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm dabbling, right? And this isn't about me. This is about the smart people we get on. But really grateful for having you in. Thanks for taking some time and sharing your background.
This is fun, man.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, right on.
Yeah, thanks.